Good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Aujourd'hui, j'ai eu la première d'une série de réunions visant à établir une nouvelle relation globale entre le Canada et les États-Unis. President Trump and I met today as leaders of two sovereign independent nations. And I want to thank the President and the members of his cabinet that attended for welcoming me and my colleagues to the White House and for our very constructive discussions. I conveyed to the President today what our countries have long proven to be true, that Canada and the United States are stronger when we work together. We can get a better deal for our workers. We can create more opportunities for our businesses. We can build stronger economies across North America when we work together. And really today marked the end of the beginning of a process of the United States and Canada redefining that relationship of working together. The question is how we will cooperate in the future, how we can build an economic and security relationship built on mutual respect, built on common interests, and that delivers transformational benefits to our economies. We had what I would describe as wide-ranging and, as I said a moment ago, very constructive discussions. We agreed to have further conversations in the coming weeks, and we are looking forward to meeting in person at the G7 summit in Kananaskis in Alberta. Now, while that's going on, in Canada, we will focus on what we can control. Alors, demain, je réunirai avec les premiers ministres pour un appel afin de faire le point sur les conversations que nous avons eues ici aujourd'hui et de discuter du travail qui nous attend. We are going to reinforce our strength at home. We will reinforce Canada's security for an increasingly dangerous and divided world. We will transform our border security, our security in the Arctic, and our support for our allies around the world. We'll build an economy that creates jobs, grows incomes, and withstands shocks. We're, in fact, the strongest economy in the G7, an economy that works for everyone. Nous allons bâtir une économie canadienne renouvelée, où tous peuvent réussir dans un monde qui est en train d'être profondément transformé. Nous allons bâtir les infrastructures qui permettront à nos entreprises de rejoindre de nouveaux marchés autour du monde. Et nous allons bâtir une seule économie canadienne par 13. We are masters in our own home, and we can give ourselves far more than any foreign government can ever take away. So now is the time to build, and based on the discussion today, to build at home and to build with our partners abroad, including the United States. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll now begin the press conference. We'll begin with questions from the traveling delegation. First question, première question.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister Tonda McCharles, Toronto Star. I was watching your face through the meeting in the Oval Office, and I wondered what was going through your mind when the President talked about erasing the artificial border and how he criticized your predecessor and Madam Freeland.
Thank you for your question. I'm glad that you couldn't tell what was going through my mind as that was going through. Look, with respect to the first point, the President has made known his wish about that issue for some time. I've been careful always to distinguish between wish and reality. I was clear there in the Oval Office, as I've been clear throughout on behalf of Canadians, that this is never going to happen. Canada is not for sale, it never will be for sale. Some things, as I said in the room, some things are never for sale, and he agreed with that. So I distinguish between the two, and then with respect to the importance of reestablishing a constructive relationship for negotiations of a partnership, of an economic and security partnership, which is what we were here for. I look forward, not back, and I think we established a good basis today.
what gives you specifically any indication that the president is willing to renegotiate a new trade deal with you and drop tariffs?
Apart from the fact that he said that he would, is willing to have that negotiation, I think that's the main thing. That doesn't presuppose the outcome of the negotiation. As I've emphasized, it's a complex negotiation. There'll be zigs and zags, difficult aspects to it. But the prospect is there. We discussed it in more detail. And as I said a moment ago, we'll be following up, both between officials, but also he and I in the coming weeks. Thank you.
Prime Minister Paul from CNN.
Sorry, no, we're going to
Bonjour,
Thank you. Thank you.
Bonjour, M. Carney.
Bonjour, madame.
Avec quoi ressortez-vous concrètement de cette rencontre avec M. Trump?
Ouais, nous avons eu une discussion à travers des sujets géopolitiques et des sujets et des enjeux qui impliquent les relations commerciales du Canada et des États-Unis. Nous avons un trajet concret. Nous avons eu un échange des perspectives en ce qui concerne les tarifs, les objectifs stratégiques des États-Unis, les objectifs stratégiques du Canada. Et il y a plusieurs enjeux sur lesquels on peut avancer les discussions. Alors, il y a un plan qui existe et une volonté qui existe entre les deux pays d'avancer les discussions. Mais il n'y a pas de décision sur n'importe quel tarif aujourd'hui.
Quand il a été question, quand on a posé la question à M. Trump sur les tarifs, s'il avait l'intention, si vous pouviez faire quelque chose pour les lever, pour les supprimer, il a dit non. Comment est-ce que vous l'interprétez?
Ce n'était pas une surprise pour moi. Pas du tout. Non, pas du tout, parce qu'il y a c'est une situation très complexe. Hein. Il y a plusieurs tarifs, il y a des liens entre les initiatives américaines, il y a le monde qui est plus dangereux et divisé, et il y a des liens entre nos relations sécuritaires et nos relations économiques. Alors, il n'y a pas une initiative canadienne qui peut changer cette situation. C'est la raison pour laquelle il faut avoir des discussions globales.
Oui, mais ce que je voulais dire, c'est qu'il faut s'attendre encore à ce que plusieurs mois, dans les prochains mois, ça reste.
On verra. Non, on verra. On verra combien de temps ça va prendre.
Prochaine question.
C'est pas nécessairement comme ça.
Hi, Prime Minister. Joanna Smith from The Logic. At one point during the meeting in the Oval Office, the President, when talking about the tariffs and talking about a deal, also made very clear that when it comes to autos, his goal is to have car makers make them in the U.S. and for the tariffs to not make any economical sense to be made in Canada anymore. Do you anticipate lifting tariffs on autos at any point? And what did you tell him in the room about that topic?
Well, we had discussion about all the major issues in the room, so to speak, in the lunch afterwards, including autos, and specifically, without going into the full details, the strategic position of the North American auto industry, or more specifically, the Canadian-U.S. auto industry, versus foreign competition, including from Asia, and how that could be enhanced. I and the Canadian government, and I would say the Canadian auto industry, I would actually say the auto industry as a whole, is of the view that Canada, the Canadian auto workers, Canadian auto companies, Canadian parts companies, Canadian steel, Canadian aluminum, all play an important role in enhancing the competitiveness of American auto companies. So we will continue to press that case and look for an arrangement that takes full advantage of it for the benefit of the United States, but of course, from our perspective, very much for the benefit of Canada.
And what did he ask you about China in your closed-door meetings, and what did you tell him?
That's why they're closed door.
China KIMA?
Well, yeah. We had a wide range of discussion.
Next question, prochaine question.
Bonjour, M. Carney. Michel Sabat, la presse canadienne. Je vais essayer de faire du chemin sur la question de ma collègue Mélanie un peu plus tôt. Est-ce que vous repartez avec quoi que ce soit de tangible au niveau du commerce, des droits de douane?
Et comme j'ai dit il y a quelques jours, je n'attendais pas qu'il y aura des fumées blancs ici, ok? Parce que ce sont des négociations, comme je viens de dire, très complexes. Il y a beaucoup d'aspects, mais on a fait de progrès. Nous avons eu des échanges très compréhensifs, très tangibles. Et il y aura des réunions entre les ministres et les fonctionnaires. Et puis, entre lui et moi, Monsieur le Président, et moi, sur l'appel, et en Alberta au mi-juin. Alors, on a fait du progrès, mais toujours dans les négociations commerciales, n'importe quelle négociation commerciale, il y a un processus et le fin, et pas nécessairement de progrès qui est apparent pendant les négociations. Ça, c'est la vie des négociations. Okay?
Parlant de
In English, I mean, to summarize, look, in a negotiation, you don't get like little elements of it. You get an end to a negotiation. We're having a very complex negotiation about a wide range of issues, and it's, as I said before I came here, I wouldn't have expected white smoke coming out of this meeting. That was not my expectation, because of the nature of the negotiation. So you don't expect to have specific progress as things move along, even when you're making progress, because that's why it's a global negotiation.
Parlant de l'Alberta, que pensez-vous de l'idée de Daniel Smith d'encourager la tenue d'un référendum sur la souveraineté de l'Alberta?
Le Canada est plus fort que quand nous travaillons ensemble comme Canadiens et Canadiens. Et je suis albertain. Et je crois fièrement en Canada. Alors, on peut poser la question, mais pour moi, la réponse est claire. Canada's stronger when we work together. As an Albertan, I firmly believe that. You can always ask a question, but I know what I would respond clearly.
Prochaine question, next question.
Bonjour, M. Carney, Olivier Ferrand-Boissé de TVA. Est-ce que M. Trump vous a convaincu qu'il voulait bel et bien renégocier l'accord de libre-échange? Parce que ça semblait pas clair dans le bureau à
Non,
tout à l'heure.
c'est clair.
Oui, il veut?
Oui.
OK. Vous avez dit à plusieurs reprises que...
C'est clair qu'il y aura... Ouais. Nous avons commencé la renégociation de nos relations commerciales, y compris la laine. OK?
Vous aviez dit à plusieurs reprises que, selon vous, M. Trump voulait nous briser pour nous posséder. Est-ce que c'est encore votre lecture de ses intentions après votre rencontre d'aujourd'hui?
Je crois nous sommes forts. Et le Canada devient de plus en plus fort, jour après jour, semaine après semaine, avec le nouveau gouvernement. Alors, il va être déçu de cette idée.
Prochaine question. Next question.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. JP Tasker, CBC News. How are you?
Hi. I'm well, thank you, JP.
Good.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
Do you feel better or worse about Canada-U.S. relations after meeting with the President today?
Look, it was a very constructive meeting. I feel better about the relations in the sense of, in many respects, one, the posture, if I can put it that way, or the positioning the President took towards us. Secondly, the breadth of discussion and how concrete the discussions were. These are the discussions you have when you're looking to find solutions, as opposed to laying down terms, if you will. So feel better about that. And I would add one other thing, which maybe isn't as obvious, so I should say it, which is that we also discussed a number of issues globally, geostrategically, if I can put it that way, where we have common interests, common concerns. And that, of course, is a sign of a broader and very healthy, or a healthy relationship. Look, we have a lot more work to do. I'm not trying to suggest at any respect that we can have one meeting and everything's changed, but now we are engaged and very fully engaged.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Ashley Burke, CBC News. What specifically did you say to President Trump about lifting tariffs on Canada? And based on your conversations, what do you think it would take to get those tariffs lifted, and how long could it take?
Well, I can't answer the second part of your question because we don't make that decision. But certainly press the case in a number of areas where we think the tariffs should be lifted. And specifically, I'll give an example with respect to the scourge of fentanyl and the efforts, the considerable efforts that have been made at our border and behind the border in terms of raids as well. Huge investments in border personnel, in drone surveillance, Black Hawk surveillance, and then those are being reinforced, as you would have seen during the campaign, commitments to another 2,000 in effect, 1,000 border guards through CBSA, another 1,000 RCMP, further efforts there. And what we're seeing is huge results for this. Canada's contribution to this problem, cross-border problem, was always very small, but it's down by over 90%. With the efforts, and it is an absolute focus of the government. So that is an example of where we would see the case being very strong for the tariffs to be removed. We've made that case. We'll see where that goes. In other areas, the tariffs are, in our view, not in the interests of American competitiveness and jobs. We have more work to do on making those cases on that. Pardon? Sur le fentanyl, alors, nous avons fait beaucoup de progrès en ce qui concerne le fentanyl. Il y a une chute. On a commencé avec un niveau très bas par rapport au Mexique. C'est moins de 1%, mais il y avait une chute le niveau, le montant de fentanyl, c'est presque 0,1% maintenant des exemples. Alors, mais c'est pas par hasard, parce que nous avons investi beaucoup en ce qui concerne la sécurité de notre frontière, et mon gouvernement va réinvestir de plus, 20% de plus par exemple par rapport les agents de la frontière. Alors, le cas pour enlever ou supprimer les tarifs de fentanyl est très fort maintenant.
Thank you. We'll have time for one last question and follow-up. Dernière question et question de suivi.
Hi, Prime Minister. Stephanie Taylor with the National Post. I heard you say, there's a difference between the President's comments around Canada becoming a 51st state as a wish versus a reality. You told him that Canada was not for sale. But many Canadians are offended and deeply angered by the fact that he keeps repeating this comment. So have you asked the President to stop calling Canada the 51st state?
Yes.
When did you ask him?
Today.
Okay, specifically, what did you ask him?
Exactly what you just said.
But what words did you use? How did you ask him?
Look, I gave you an answer. Do you have a follow-up?
No. What was his answer?
Well, look, I don't know. He's the president. He's his own person. I would go back to showing the difference between a wish and a reality. We're very clear. I've been very clear publicly, consistently. I've been very clear in private. I was clear again in the Oval Office. We'll be clear throughout. The president, he understands that we're having a negotiation between sovereign nations, and that we will only pursue and accept a deal that's in the best interests of Canada, not just in the short term, but in the medium and long term for Canada. J'ai dit, c'est pas utile de répéter cette idée. Je l'ai dit à lui, mais le président, il va dire ce qu'il veut. Pas. Mais il y a une grande différence entre la réalité et la volonté, comme vous le savez.
This will be the last question. Sorry, just last question.
Okay.
Steph didn't take a follow-up, so last question, please. Thank you.
Hi, this is Paul Munger from the Wall Street Journal. Given what's happened with the USMCA and the tariffs that Canada is facing, how do you trust that the U.S. right now is negotiating in good faith, and how do you trust the deal you signed?
We'll make that determination over the course of the negotiations. I mean, that's the bottom line on that. It's a process. You see, and I would emphasize the following, which is that we have been in the process, as most would know, of an election, and so this is the point at which a serious discussion begins. And so we had the president at his invitation. I'm here. He welcomed us. We had a very substantive, wide-ranging discussion with the president, but in the presence of the vice president, the secretary of commerce, the secretary of foreign affairs, and beyond, his chief of staff as well. Now I'm in trouble. Stephen Miller. I think that covers it. I hope so. And we have some very specific things to follow up on and build out from that. And in any negotiation, then you make a determination based on that. It also, part of what you make a determination based on are the incentives aligned in the agreement that you get. And I think the lesson would be of this experience is to ensure that the incentives are aligned and durably so between the two countries, and that is a way that agreements are self-reinforcing. Thank you very much.
Prime Minister, this was the next press conference. C'est ce qui met fin à notre conférence de presse. Merci.